Well, I'm available to start at right tackle.
You can't see when I have clothes on.
All right. Well, there's not an even playing field. There's never been an even playing field. There never will be an even playing field.
What shampoo do you use on your hair?
You don't need to be Superman to play in this offense.
You're listening to The Red Zone. Welcome, Badgers fans, to another episode of The Red Zone. I'm your host, Jason Galloway with the Wisconsin State Journal. If you missed our first episode of the week, you can go back and listen to that on iTunes or Google Play or madison.com or YouTube. I think that's up on YouTube by now as well. But we talked to Jim Polzine, also from the State Journal, about sort of just the disaster that was the Northwestern game and kind of what's gone wrong this season as a whole. And we also talked to Kendrick Pryor about Jack Cohn's first start and kind of what he feels like the team needs to do to kind of get back in that Big Ten West race. But make sure you check that out if you haven't already. This is our Mailbag episode that we do every Friday, and I already asked for your guys' questions, so I'm going to go ahead and get right into it here. The first one is from Bill_Woj at Slow_Creek. He asks, the fact that the offense has so overwhelmingly underachieved this year is rather discouraging for the program. On paper, it just doesn't make any sense. Are players playing through injuries, perhaps? What are the top 1 to 2 things wrong with the offense? Yeah, Bill, as far as the injuries are concerned, obviously we found out, I think last week, that David Edwards had played through the start of the season with a shoulder injury, and I think he really battled through that for a good portion of the season at the beginning there. I think he's starting to get healthier at this point. I think the last few games he's felt a lot better, but I think that's a big reason why he when you look back at that BYU tape, he really had a bad game, and I would guess that his injury was a big reason for that. So I think that that may have had a big impact on kind of what happened with the offense against BYU, especially with not only Edwards dealing with that, but Xander Neville going out on the second play and them not really being prepared yet to have Logan Bruss or Jason Urban in there as blocking tight ends. So I think there was some trouble kind of sealing the edge from that perspective. So I think injury-wise, besides that, I don't know that I'm not really sure if there's been anything else. Of course, sometimes there are things that people are dealing with that you don't know. So I think that could be potentially the case. But I mean, that as of right now, nothing else has really come out yet. As far as what's gone wrong, I think that I think you would definitely like to get more consistent quarterback play. I think that Jack Cohn's first start, obviously you can't really expect too much from a first start for a guy, but I think Alex Hornibrook, really his last 2 games before Northwestern weren't very good either. He was really bad at Michigan, and then the Illinois game he was pretty inconsistent too. So you definitely want to get more consistent quarterback play, and then the receiving core hasn't really created the type of separation and given them a real deep threat this year. I think they really miss Quintez Cephas's ability to stretch the defense, and I kind of thought AJ Taylor would be able to do that this year for them. And I think in spurts maybe he has, but I think he hasn't been able to kind of do that as much as you would hope. And so I think when you have some inconsistent quarterback play and you don't really have any explosive plays in the pass game, if you're not a real threat to make plays downfield in the passing game, then teams can really stack the box against you. I think that's really what's happened against Wisconsin a lot this year. I kind of pointed it out a little bit in the film room this week after the Northwestern game. They were really selling out against the run in a lot of instances, and there were some times where the offensive line and the tight ends and fullbacks, everybody kind of made their block, but there was just one more guy from Northwestern that then Wisconsin had to block, and a safety just kind of came down early and made a play for a short gain. I think sometimes that's kind of the problem. I think these last few games you want to see this team be able to test a team deep a little bit better than they have, and kind of make some more explosive plays in the passing game so that can open up the running game a little bit. So I think that's, as far as like kind of the what's maybe the number one thing that's gone wrong, I think that's kind of what it is. Now that the offensive line started slow, and like I said, I think Edwards was part of that, but they've been playing well really since the bye week. Maybe Saturday wasn't their best game against Northwestern, but I don't think they played as bad as it looked when you look at kind of the failures of the running game in that game. So I think that's kind of where we're at. You kind of just expected, we kind of just assumed the offense would take a big step forward with everybody back, but the passing game really hasn't, and I think that's a big reason why they haven't been able to be as successful as we hoped. Let's see, the next one is from Biscuits at Wisco Inferno. He asked, Jason, do you think we're being too critical of Christ and the program for its apparent shortcomings this season? I think some fans are. I've seen a couple fire Chris tweets, and that's obviously ridiculous, I think, and that's probably the very few people are saying that. But I think when you consider the fact that they've really overachieved the last couple of years, I think to be going into that 2016 season, everybody thought they were going to be 7-5 and be nowhere near the top 25, and they finished as a top 10 team. And to go 2 straight years winning a New Year's Six bowl game and finishing in the top 10, I think is a huge accomplishment for this program. And obviously this season hasn't gone as well as you'd hoped, and this team wasn't shying away from the expectations that they had. I think they really believed they could do something special this year, and obviously there's been some issues that that they haven't been able to overcome. I also think you have to consider the fact that they have had a lot of injuries defensively that really hurt them, and they had a lot of holes to fill defensively too. We kind of expected them to fill them a little bit better than they have, but I think that they had some injuries in spots where they couldn't really afford it, particularly on the defensive line. And it's just kind of everything's just kind of not gone their way so far. So it's going to be interesting to see how they finish out the season. I think if they finish 7-5, which I think is really possible now, it looks a lot worse than if they went to Penn State and pulled an upset or something like that. I don't see that happening. I don't like I said on the podcast Wednesday, I don't see a path to where they can pull off the upset at Penn State. But I think we'll have to see how these last 4 games play out. But I think at this point, it's been really disappointing, and you can definitely criticize them in certain areas. I mean, it's not like they are free of any criticism, but I do think maybe some fans are being a little harsh and taking it a little far, considering how good this program was the last 2 years and kind of overachieving what everybody thought they were going to be. Let's see. The next one's from the Wishbone at Sean Geary 4. He asked, because of so many injuries, a lot of different guys have gotten time in the secondary. For next season, assuming everyone is healthy, how do you see the Badgers secondary looking? Who starts at the 3 corner spots and who starts at the safety positions? Yeah, I guess from the corner perspective, it's everybody's coming back, so it's who's really going to win these battles when everybody's healthy. And I think as of right now, Rashad Wildgoose is going to be a starter going forward. He's a guy that they've been really impressed with, and Leonard has come out and said even when everybody's healthy, he is a starter for this team now. So I think I would probably go with Wildgoose and Faion Hicks as the 2 corners that sort of start on the outside, and Madison Cohen I think would be the number 1 slot guy for right now. He's been sort of the number 1 guy in the slot really the whole season. One interesting thing to think about there though is that last week I talked to some people about Wildgoose, and they said that he's working a lot in the slot in practice, and he really wants to learn that and get good at that. And I think if he's able to do that, 'cause right now they don't have really a second guy behind Cohen. I think they feel great about in the slot. But if Wildgoose can become really familiar with that role, then I think Cohen can have a battle on his hands with sort of whoever the next outside corner is, whether it's Caesar Williams or Duron Harrell. If one of those guys is outperforming Cohen, then maybe you see Wildgoose starting with Hicks. But then if they go to nickel, maybe Wildgoose goes into the slot and Caesar Williams or Duron Harrell goes in there. But I think as of right now, looking at next season at corner, I'd probably say, Wildgoose, Hicks on the outside, and Cohen in the slot as far as your starting corners, so to speak. And at safety, I think Scott Nelson is, he's been out injured a lot, and he has made some mistakes in his freshman year, but I still think he's going to start at one of the safety positions. And then it's going to be a battle to see who takes that other spot, with Dakota Dixon leaving. I think really the candidates are Eric Burrell and Reggie Pearson. I think are 2 big candidates for that. And I can't really speak to Colin Wilder, the transfer from Houston, who's sitting out this year for NCAA transfer rules. Maybe he'll factor in there. I think he'll be a junior, 4th-year junior next year after he can actually be eligible to play. Haven't really seen him a whole lot yet, so it's hard for me to judge, how much of a factor he could play. But I think considering the guys that are there, I think it's probably going to come down to Burrell or Pearson. And, I think when you look at it, I kind of lean toward Pearson. Now I say that, knowing that I haven't seen a whole lot of him either. He's a guy that's really played in 1 game, but I liked a lot of the things he did against Michigan. And I think he really complements Scott Nelson well. He's a guy that can really come up and play the run well. And Nelson's obviously more of the free safety type of guy that can cover a lot of ground. sort of as the last man of defense. So I think Burrell is definitely going to factor in there too, though. I think he can. I think it could be a real battle between him and Pearson, unless Wilder comes in there and is better than both of them. So I don't know much about him, but we'll have to kind of see how it plays out. I think there's a lot of guys that could sort of factor into that safety role opposite Scott Nelson. Hope I'm not forgetting anybody there at safety. Hopefully I'm not. I think that's it though. All right. The next one is from Mookie at Mookie33. He asks, "What's the vibe of the players this week? As expected, the interview mantras, they're focused on Rutgers, but have to imagine it's got to be deflating to have effectively been eliminated from the Big Ten West race." Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think Wisconsin is, and you're right, they kind of have to say that, but I think they're really trying to just focus on themselves and trying to. They said that a lot after the Northwestern game too. Even when they said they really just want to focus on getting better at this point, they can't really focus on the Big Ten West because at this point they just things have gone so wrong that they just kind of have to do what they can to get better and go from there. I think that's kind of the mindset they're taking is just, yeah, we could scoreboard watch and know that these other teams have to lose and we have to win to get back in the Big Ten West race. But really, we just kind of want to get better at this point, and things haven't really gone our way, and we just kind of want to improve the best we can. I kind of think that's the approach they're taking now. I do think that they're definitely there's sort of a level of acceptance in my mind just from talking to the players. It didn't seem like. I think after the Northwestern game, it wasn't sort of an emotional interview room. Nobody said, players said that nobody really specifically, stepped up and talked to everybody in the locker room. They just they were obviously really disappointed with the loss, but I feel like they realize this season hasn't gone as they expected, and they realize a lot of their goals are gone. But I think at this point they're just going to try to kind of do what they can to just improve, and if they happen to do well enough at that to win the next couple of games and pull off an upset at Penn State, then maybe you start thinking, okay, maybe we can get back in this and give the West a run over the last couple of weeks. All right, next one is from M Vicious at MVicious2. He said, "Do you think any other wide receivers will play with the way the season has turned out this far?" That's a good question. I still think that the top three guys are going to be the top three guys. I do think maybe you'll see Aaron Cruikshank maybe he gets a little bit more work. I think he and Jack Dunn kind of got really Adam Krumholtz has kind of gotten in there too lately, at least here and there. So I think that they might throw some of those young guys in. But I do still think the top three are the top three, and at this point it doesn't look like those guys are really threatening to supplant those guys. Now I said that. Yeah, I said earlier they haven't really stretched the field like you'd hope, and maybe a guy like Cruikshank, if you give him some more snaps, maybe he's a guy that's able to do that because we kind of saw them take a shot to him in the first half against Northwestern. They did play action on first down. I think it was the second quarter, and or maybe even the first quarter, and kind of went deep to him. It didn't really work out. I think he was covered pretty well and a little bit overthrown from Cone, but I think that maybe they'll try to get him more involved, but. So besides that, though, I don't think besides those three guys with Cruikshank and Dunn and Krumholtz, I think those would be the guys to get the opportunity if somebody gets more playing time. Next one's from Badger Fan at Divot516. He asks, "The game plan and play calling has been a point of criticism this year, but when you look at the past, Paul Chryst is consistent to grind it out, run clock, and not take many chances. The difference this year is the D is okay, but not great. Do you see it differently?" Yeah, I think that definitely. I think I agree with you there, Badger Fan. I think that. Paul Chryst, I don't think is really doing anything differently than he has the last few years, and I think that. I think the defense kind of not being able to really contribute in the way they have the last couple of years really kind of turns the attention toward the offense, and I think that. Look, I think the offense should be criticized this year. They really should have taken a step forward with as many guys as they had coming back. And obviously the Cephas departure, suspension hurts, and the Neville injury hurts and things like that. But, you would have liked to see them take a little bit more of a step forward in the passing game. But I also think that it's just, I think the shortcomings in the offense, I think the offense is just under more of a microscope this year because because the defense isn't able to kind of carry the day, I guess. When the defense isn't playing well, you kind of look to the offense, kind of puts more pressure on the offense to make plays, and they just haven't really come through yet. So I don't necessarily think the problem with the offense is the scheme. I really don't. I think that Paul Chryst has had a lot of successful offenses at Wisconsin in the past that have put up a lot of points, and those were teams that had a lot of talent, and that we thought this offense has a lot of talent too, and I think it does, but it just hasn't come together yet. And I think you hope that in the offseason they can figure some things out. Hopefully you can get the passing game going, whether it's Hornibrook taking a step up or the receivers, playing a little bit better. We'll see. But I think just think in the offseason you want to get that passing game going a little bit more. But I don't think scheme is really the issue. Okay, another one from Badger fan. He says, we hear the playbook is too complex and takes years for players to learn it. Any idea, one, what makes it so complex, and two, when would see it more considering HB playing still saw the same conservative approach? Okay, I don't understand the second part there. I think you may have misworded that. I'm not really sure exactly what you're asking. But as far as the playbook being complex, I don't know if it's really I don't really have the playbook in front of me. Obviously, they're not going to give me the playbook. So, but I don't know if it's really much more complex than other college playbooks. I think it's a matter of I think it's just a common thing for young guys to come in, and I think it's much more complex than your high school football playbooks. And I think that's kind of the issue with some of the younger guys. And I think programs around the country kind of have the same issue. Is when a freshman comes in, do they have the mental do they have the mental makeup to be able to learn an offense that's a lot more complex than they're used to and a lot different than they're used to in time, especially if they come in the fall rather than the spring, and while they're also adjusting physically to the next level as well. And so I think that sometimes it takes the guys a couple years. I think Aaron Cruikshank kind of was learning slowly, and he's kind of getting more comfortable with everything now. Kendrick Pryor talked about his first year, how maybe a big reason why he redshirted was because he just had to get the playbook down. But I don't necessarily think that means that Wisconsin's is one of the most complex in college football or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of a really big jump from high school to college, and I think that's kind of why some guys take a little while to figure that out. All right, Ryder Cup captain at Badger OC1, he asked, will Paul Chryst ever see the advantages of a mobile, not a running, but a mobile quarterback over an immobile pocket passer? Why does the rest of the world see it except him? Ryder Cup captain, I think you've asked me this kind of question before, and I don't think Chryst, I think he does see the advantages of a mobile quarterback, but I don't think, and I think everybody does. I think it's, a skill set of a quarterback that could be really helpful to buy more time in the pocket. And obviously you'd rather your quarterback be mobile than not mobile. But I think there's a lot of other things to go into playing quarterback too. And I don't think he's going to, eliminate a quarterback from sort of their board and recruiting just because he's not super mobile. Now, that being said, they do have a couple mobile guys coming. I think, Chase Wolf, I think, is a pretty mobile guy who's redshirting this year. Graham Mertz is a guy coming in next year who like you said, not really a running quarterback, but I think he can be a little bit more mobile than what we've seen. I understand sort of the frustration there with Badgers fans when you go from you go from Joel Stavy to Alex Hornibrook, two guys that just aren't mobile. And, so you've had an immobile quarterback for quite a while, and sometimes that kind of shows against maybe against a better defense when the pass protection isn't as good as you'd hope. So I understand the frustration there, but I think Chryst understands that, it's better to be mobile than not. But I just think that he's also trying to, I think he's trying to find the best quarterbacks he can, and that's just one part of the equation. And I think that, Alex Hornibrook is somebody he liked coming out of high school as a passer, and he just decided that, he was worth a scholarship despite the fact that he's not mobile. So I don't think it's something that Chryst completely overlooks. Okay, you have another one too. The LA Rams offense became great because of Sean McVay and the innovative scheme he brought with him. Why won't Paul Chryst hire a bright young offensive coordinator to rejuvenate a stale, predictable, unimaginative, unbalanced offense that is easy to scheme against? Like I said earlier, I don't really think the scheme is the issue here. I think the I think the issues with the passing game are kind of the reason why their running game also hasn't been quite as consistent as you like. Like I said earlier, Paul Chryst has done a lot of great things with his scheme at Wisconsin. He's had some offenses that put up a lot of points. But I just don't think the scheme is the issue. And yeah, I mean, it would be exciting maybe to have a different type of offense where you pass the ball more often and kind of run and gun teams. But that's not his style. I don't think he's going to change from it. And I'm sure some people don't necessarily like the methodical approach, but that's just what it is. So I think you're going to have to live with it. And again, he's had good offenses here before that have done a lot of good things. So I think you just kind of have to wait and see how the next couple of years play out. All right, last one here from Kevin at DC Badger 7. He asks, so I've looked at the defensive line depth chart with an eye towards 2019. Reassure me that disaster is not looming. Yeah, I don't think disaster is looming there, Kevin. I think that, they're going to get Garrett Rand back, or at least we believe he's going to be back by the start of next season. It's a bad injury, the Achilles injury that he had, but I also think that if he's able to come back and be himself again, that's a really big boost for the defense. And I think you kind of forget about Rand sometimes because he got injured so long ago. I think it was back in May that he suffered that injury, but he's a guy that was going to start at defensive end for this team and a guy that's gotten a lot of experience. And he's played nose tackle the last couple of years out of necessity, but really he's more of a natural end, and I think he could have had a big season. So I think if you get Laudermilk and Rand back healthy, I think you look a lot better at defensive end. Maybe you leave Caden Lyles there for depth. Maybe Matt Henningsen takes a step forward. He's only a redshirt freshman, so maybe he can be a little better, and maybe some other guys can step up to give you more depth. But I think if you have those two guys back, you're in pretty good shape there. And then of course you lose Olive Sangapolu, which I think is going to be a really big loss. But I think by next year Bryson Williams will be a pretty decent player, and I think he's made some progress this year playing as a true freshman. I think you're looking at him as your starting nose tackle next year. Not sure what they're going to do about depth at that position yet. I think they have a guy or two that can play the nose coming in this recruiting class, I believe. But we'll have to kind of see how the depth plays out there. But if you have to, you can move Rand back there too. But I don't think it's going to be. If everybody stays healthy, I think the defensive line should take a step up next year. But again, you would probably like a little bit more depth at end, even with those guys back. And if they can't stay healthy, if Rand isn't the same player, he can't stay healthy, or Laudermilk continues to have some injury issues, then maybe it could be an issue again next season. But we'll have to wait and see. But you have to be excited about the possibility of having Rand and Laudermilk going into next season. All right, that's going to do it for this week. Thanks for all your questions, guys. If you didn't get your question in time, or you thought of something later, we're going to do a live chat after the Rutgers game sometime Saturday night. So follow me on Twitter at Jason_Galloway to kind of get an update on when I'm going to go live there. And, if you haven't subscribed yet to the Red Zone, you can do so on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure you go on there, and it only takes a second to subscribe, and it really helps us out. And maybe give us a rating too, if you enjoy the podcast. That really helps as well. But keep visiting madison.com for all your Badgers football news, and I will talk to you later.